All right, we're back, and we're going to welcome, like as promised, Detective Dave Rudolph, 19-year veteran of the SLMPD, currently assigned to the Homicide Division, right?
Yes, sir.
Been down there for a while?
Yeah, about 5 years.
Okay. All right. Tommy, we've got a good guest on today.
Oh, yeah, like Danny said, Dave Rudolph. Dave was a lead investigator in an investigation in the murder of Andre Montgomery. And this is a very interesting case, and some of you may have heard about it. It's been in the news. This investigation was a wild murder for hire. It was like a jigsaw puzzle. And it involved reality show stars, gangsters, rappers, strippers, burner phones, jailhouse tapes, life insurance policies. I mean, this thing
Sounds like a movie.
I'm telling you. And then it involves the sweetie pies, and we'll get into that. And Dave has an interesting story of how the investigation went. You know, it's been out there. It's been on the news. It's been on cable, and but nobody's ever heard it from Dave's point of view.
You were the investigator or one of the investigators?
One of the investigators. I was assigned to it as a follow-up several years after the murder.
So as promised by the Brighter Side of Blue, we get inside scoop.
Right, and then it's a neat story. It was a team of investigators, like he said.
Yeah.
So before we get started, and like I said, Dave, this is the murder of Andre Montgomery. Give us a little background on Andre, just so everybody knows who we're talking about as we go through this investigation.
Yeah, so Andre was born in San Diego, California. His father was killed in Los Angeles during a gang violence right around the time he was born. Andre's grandmother is Robbie Montgomery. She was a backup singer for Ike and Tina Turner, and she started a restaurant called Sweetie Pies in St. Louis. It was a soul food restaurant. Her son, James Timothy Norman, I'll probably refer to him as Tim. He did some prison time, and while he was in prison, he had come up with this plan for a reality show. And when he came out, the Oprah Network picked it up and did several seasons. So Andre was living in Texas back in 08 or 09, right before the show started. And he moved here to St. Louis to live with his grandmother, Robbie. He was featured on the show several seasons, paid by the show, not a lot of money. But that's kind of the background of Andre. He went to McClure North High School and graduated. That was featured on the show. There was a whole episode about it. But, kids being kids, eventually Andre put some stuff on social media. It wasn't anything bad. I think it was told to me that the producers of the show didn't like the kind of hair he was wearing. And he was, I think, smoking a little bit of marijuana.
Oh, wait. Oh, jeez.
Come on now. No, but so Andre, let's go into, but before Andre gets murdered, there is a burglary at Miss Robbie's house. And take us through that a little bit, because that has a lot to do with the other stuff that goes on in this case.
Correct. It's kind of important to back up a little bit. So because of the marijuana use, he was removed from the show.
Really?
He was. And he eventually moved back to Texas. And right around 2014.
Now, how old was he? Approximate.
Late teens.
Okay.
It was after he graduated high school.
I'm trying to remember the character, because I remember kind of watching it.
Yeah. So he moved back to Texas, and right around October of 2014, Tim Norman, his uncle, reached out to his mother and said, "Hey, I want to bring him back to St. Louis, get him a job, get him into school, mentor him." So they arranged for him to come back to St. Louis. And kind of right around that time, also in October of 2014, nobody knew this until after his death, Tim Norman had obtained a life insurance policy on him.
On Andre?
On Andre, to a tune of about $450,000.
Okay.
Kind of the way it broke down was, it was a $200,000 if he died, $200,000 if he died by accident, and homicide, believe it or not, is considered an accident. and $50,000 term rider. So if he died within 10 years of the policy,
An
that's
extra 50.
An extra 50. And we didn't know it about at the time. We later found out that he not only obtained that policy. You look like you're about to fall out of your chair.
No, I
Tommy.
said
No,
that.
because
Oh,
JJ
no.
said that's a clue.
Oh, that's
This
a
whole
clue.
thing's a clue.
That's a clue.
That's a clue. JJ's catching on.
I think I can go to homicide now.
No.
Yeah.
Stay where you're at.
But we later found out that he really tried to obtain about 5 life insurance policies over the course of a few years.
Right.
So Andre was brought back, and Tim initially got him into Nellie's music school, put him up in a place to live. But it wasn't long after that he was kind of put out in the cold, kind of left to fend for himself. So he was struggling, to say the least. Well, Tim was moving pretty hard at that time. He had a lot of things going. He was opening up Sweetie Pies out in L.A. A lot going on.
Rap business.
Rap business.
Yep.
And kind of in that June 2015 time period, Robbie Montgomery had gone out of town. And when she returned home, her house had been burglarized. And when I say burglarized, it was torn to hell. Couches ripped open. She reported about $225,000 worth of cash and property stolen. We were told by some people it was closer to $1 million.
And this is Sweetie Pie, basically.
Mrs.
Yeah.
Mrs.
This is
Robbie.
Sweetie Pie.
Robbie.
Mrs. Robbie.
That's
yeah.
what she goes by, I believe. Wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, but you're right.
Just clearing it up.
No, you're doing good, JJ.
Thanks.
No.
Hang in there.
Go ahead.
So, also important to kind of note, back in June of 2015, right around that time of that burglary, Tim Norman had filmed a rap video with Migos.
Pimpin' how he lose his major earner. Don't burn her. And yeah, you looking fine, but girl, I'm trying to check your credit. Bitch, don't ask me about my cash, and I don't never fuck with debit.
And he had flown several people out to be in this rap video. It included high-level dope men and several people from the Forest Park Southeast neighborhood, which is where the original Sweetie Pies was.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And of course, kind of jumping forward in the investigation, I remember when I saw the names that he brought out there. I had worked in the 9th District Detective Bureau, and I knew the names. And I remember looking at one of the other investigators and saying, hey, if our killer's in one of these names.
Right. In the video. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how you got them tied together. Now he's telling you the story how all these rappers or this video went on, but it's really interesting how he got the information. And when Andre gets killed on 3/14 of 16, correct?
Correct.
And Dave wasn't even in homicide at the time. He was a 9th District detective. So tell everybody how you got involved in the case, and then what information you got right off the bat from the previous investigator.
Yeah. So what got me involuntarily transferred to homicide was there was a 7-year-old child who was murdered up in Old North St. Louis. His name's Xavier Uzanga. And I was sitting back in the bureau one day, and I was right next to Johnny Anderson, who I have a huge amount of respect for. He's an amazing detective.
Yep.
And Colonel Kreisman, then Captain Kreisman, came back to the bureau, and she grabbed me and John, and she said, hey, this guy may or may not have murdered this child, but they have his name, and they know that he stole $50,000 from his armored car. He was an armored car driver. She said, you need to head down to homicide, and you guys are going to be assigned to investigate the theft. So we headed down there, met with Matt Frichtel and Brandon Wims, and worked pretty closely with them. Very good coppers, good investigators. And we were able to develop a federal case on the shooter, Malik Ross. Charges never got issued on the murder case, but he ultimately pled guilty to the theft of the money, and he got 10 years in the feds. But about a week later, Captain Kreisman came up to my desk again, but this time she said, hey, I need to see you in my office. I headed back to her office, and it wasn't just me getting transferred to homicide.
Yeah.
There was a group of us. But she said, hey, Jerry Lashock just called. Said, you're going down to homicide in 5 minutes. The transfer is getting ready to come out, or the detachment, rather.
Right.
Head
And
on
I
down.
Can I say something about him?
Yep.
Just he is a dogged detective.
Oh,
he
yeah.
puts a lot of hours in. His reputation was good, and they know when he gets a dog, he's like a dog with a bone. He don't
Right.
let go, and he keeps going and going. And he puts in, I don't even know how many hours he puts in.
Right.
But my neighbor Jeff, was a homicide detective, always had the most respect for him. Said, man, the guy, if you need something, you go to Dave.
Right.
And it's like when you want something done, you go to a busy person. That's Dave.
So that's why you went to
Lashock liked
homicide.
that kind of
Yeah,
talent.
that's
And
why you
that-
went to
that's
homicide.
Lashock's kind of guy right there, right?
And I don't need to, really suck up
that's
to you
good.
or anything, but
that's
I don't
that's-
have to.
Well, that's nice to say. I've been blessed to be around really, really good policemen for my entire career, and you pick up a little bit from each person.
Oh yeah,
that you
yeah.
meet.
We always talk about that.
Yep.
But it was kind of a funny conversation because I said, no, I don't think I'm going. She's like, no, I think you're going. I said, well, you need to.
Apparently, you thought I asked you a question.
Yeah.
I go, I don't really know. I've never worked for Jerry Lashock. I've probably spoken 3 words to him.
Yeah.
Get him on the phone. I'm not going. She goes, you don't know Jerry Lashock. You're going. So I
That would have
packed.
been a funny call.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Jerry's not coming. Oh yeah, he is.
Okay, so we're past the burglary now.
Yeah.
Which they knew they were looking
Yep.
for something.
And now what lands on your desk is you get walked over first day you're down there. You get a case. What case is it?
Yeah, Scott Ecker walked up to my desk with a report and said, hey, this kid was murdered on March 14th, 2016 up on Natural Bridge. He's got a really, really nice mother. She is going to call constantly, and you need to take this case. It was Roger Murphy's case to begin with, and I just happened to take over his desk. I don't think it was anything special about me. I just
Right.
sat at his desk, and he gave us a really good start. We had a good start, and a group of investigators came together, and we were lucky enough to finish it.
So when you get down to Roger's desk, you get the case. Does mom call right away?
Well, Scott Ecker said, hey, you need to call her. I think she was already calling homicide. I
Yeah.
didn't know about this.
Right. That's why they gave it to you.
This is sweetie. This is sweetie
Let's
pie,
let
right?
Rudolph deal with it.
Yeah,
with
new
her.
guy.
This is Andre's mom.
Okay, Andre's mom.
Yeah, her name's Miss Griggs. So, of course, I didn't do what Eck told me to do. I kind of waited on it because I wanted to review the report
Know
before
what
I
you were talking about?
Right.
I wanted to know what I was talking about. But I remember being off one night, probably a week after I got the case, and I got a call from Amy Funk, who was on 6 to 2s at the time. She said, do you know this Miss Griggs? I said, well, I've never met her before. And she goes, well, look, she's calling from Lubbock, Texas, and she somehow got a hold of our 911 dispatch center. I don't know how she did it, but will you please give her a call?
Yeah.
So I think me and Miss Griggs' first call was like at 8 or 9 o'clock at night on a weekend.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
It's part of the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
Welcome to the homicide business.
Yeah.
So, and then again, you have Roger gives you the information, and within that investigation, talk about the scene and the cell phone you caught, or the cell phone you got, and the information you got from that cell phone.
Yeah, by all accounts, it was a pretty chaotic scene. Not because it was complicated, but a lot of things happened. Andre Montgomery had gone there with his friend. Well, I guess I should back up. Andre had left town right around the time of this burglary at his grandmother's house. And that kind of raised suspicion with Miss Robbie.
Yeah.
This robbery.
Yeah, not Miss Robbery.
She was a victim of it, though. Kind of a burglary.
So-
Go ahead.
That kind of raised suspicion. And in reality, Andre had just gotten sick of not being able to make a living, and he moved down to Florida with an acquaintance. But it was suspicious to them. So Miss Robbie wanted him to come back to St. Louis to participate in a polygraph examination with St. Louis County Police. And by the communications I later reviewed, Andre was deathly afraid that Tim was going to hurt him if he came back to St. Louis. I mean, it was kind of those eerie things.
So they were putting it out there that he was probably the best suspect. On the streets, he was the suspect.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Go ahead.
Now, I'll make it clear, we extensively looked into everybody involved in this investigation. An 19, 20, 21-year-old kid steals that amount of money, they're not going to be living in Florida the lifestyle he was living. So it was abundantly clear he had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
But early to mid-March 2014, or I'm sorry, early to mid-March 2016, Andre comes back and he participates in a polygraph examination.
Relative to the burglary?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and you know, reading through the county police report, one of the last lines is he's no longer considered a suspect in this burglary. And they did a pretty extensive investigation. He had nothing to do with it. But he was hanging out with some friends while he was in town. They had gone to a strip club over in East St. Louis, right around his arrival in St. Louis.
You guys have been there.
Bottoms up, maybe.
Bottoms up.
Yes.
Can't say I have, but go ahead.
So that'll become important later on.
Right.
But so on the day he was murdered, him and his friends went to a recording studio at 3964 Natural Bridge. It's a vacant house now. But if you can imagine old city, 2-family flat, the first floor was occupied, the second floor was unoccupied, but it was owned by the same family. And that family had rented the basement to another family member who had like a makeshift recording studio. It looked like a lot like this.
Right.
So it was awesome. It was totally awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So Andre and his friends went over there, and the friends had said, hey, he was talking about meeting this gal all day. And he picked up the phone a couple times in the basement, and we knew he was talking to a female. Well, at some point, he goes outside to meet this female, and short time later, we hear gunshots, and we hear Andre run across the floor screaming. He hits the floor. Now, here's what makes the scene confusing, just a little bit upon arrival. One of his friends has a gun in the basement, completely legal gun owner, nice kid, full-time job, no problems whatsoever. Well, he hears Andre's in trouble, so he arms himself and goes running up the stairs. I say kid, he's in his 20s. The kid that was living there was watching Batman in his room. He kind of owned the house. His elderly grandma's in the side room, and his toddler's in there. And he goes, I'm watching Batman, and I hear these gunshots, and I thought it was on
On the TV. Yeah.
on the TV, but then they start getting closer. So he said, I got my toddler here, and I got my grandma here. So I grab my gun, and I kind of cover out the door, and I can see this stairs going up to the second floor, or rather up to the first floor from the basement. And he goes, I see a gun. And this is how he testified in court. He goes, I see a gun coming up the stairs. And I don't really see the guy, but I see the gun. And I know that guns don't float. So I said, drop the gun, and then I fired. Well, he shot one of Andre's friends that was coming to
Help
help
Andre.
To help Andre.
help
shit.
Andre.
So yeah, that's a tough one. You meant
That's a tough scene.
Tough scene to show up to.
Yep.
But yeah,
Yep.
go ahead.
So, like I said, Andre ran into the house, and he passed away on the floor of the living room. And, looking at the crime scene photos, because I wasn't on the scene, it wasn't a robbery. He had his jewelry on. His phone was laying along the path. So we were pretty interested in that phone when we got the case, and went and picked it up out of property custody, had it re-examined, and started looking at that phone examination. And Roger knew already who Andre was talking to and who he was planning to meet, but we started from scratch and checked every box.
Right,
along the
and
way.
just kind of skim over of who's involved now and how they're involved, such as what did you find out from that phone as far as the burner information?
Yeah, so looking at the person he was obviously going out to meet.
Because she called. There's a phone call right before he goes out, and he goes out.
Yeah, phone call
Right.
and text message communication. Now, it was a little tough because at the time of his murder, he was actually on the phone with another friend. He had met this female already, and he was calling another friend, and the phone went dead. So we looked into that number and found out that it was one of his buddies that was just trying to find the recording studio. We backed up, and we could tell from the communication that he was meeting this person and that this phone had been activated that day. I want to say there was a message in there like, Andre said to her, hey, I texted your other phone. And she said, yeah, that phone's getting cut off today. Delete that number. So looking back in the communications, we were able to tell that it was Tarek Ellis holding that phone that started communication with him that day.
And the name is Tarek Ellis?
Tarek Ellis.
Okay.
It was saved in Andre's phone as Alexis the Great, which was her stage name. She was a stripper out of Memphis that was driving to St. Louis to dance at Bottoms Up on the weekends.
Okay. And so then you tied those numbers together. And what other number did you, there was one other number you tied in there that led you to Tim Norman, correct?
Yeah, we had to serve some legal process on that burner phone, and we found out that, well, let me back up. We looked at the communications on that phone once we got a search warrant for it, and we looked at the travels of it, and we could tell that the phone was activated. It first got service the day of the murder around the Chase Park Plaza, also near a Walgreens where the phone ended up being purchased. We could tell that it traveled straight to Memphis, Tennessee in record time after the murder.
Wow, really?
Yeah. I mean, made it down to Memphis, and she had to have been driving 110 miles an hour.
And then you also had the third phone that you got to Tim Norman, and it told you some interesting information too.
Yeah, her phone really only talked to another burner phone and Andre, and then this mystery phone who we thought was probably the shooter. So we looked at that other burner phone she was talking to, not the shooters, but the other phone. She had called it right after the murder. And when we looked at the location, we could see that it was activated on the day of the murder, right by the Chase Park Plaza.
Same place.
Same place. It really only talked to Terica's burner phone. It was in St. Louis the day of the murder, and it was at Lambert International Airport at the time of the murder. And then it flew out to California through Minneapolis connection. He must have turned the phone on when he got to Minneapolis because we got the Minneapolis connection. And we actually looked at FlightAware and compared that route to known flights that day. We're able to get the manifest and see that Tim Norman was on the.
All right.
So now we're
client.
cooking. We're starting to cook a little bit. We got information, but then you're still working on this as a state level. How do the federal prosecutors get involved in a local murder case?
Well, it was over a horseback ride at our family farm.
There you go.
Yeah.
Say that again.
Yeah. Say what?
So what?
It was over a horseback ride.
Right.
Yeah. Family farm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Not
Yeah.
your family farm.
No, so my aunt owns a farm over in Illinois, and we have horses and ride horses. And I knew a federal prosecutor from when she was a state prosecutor. Her name's Angie Danis, and very tough, hardworking prosecutor. And I knew I had all this stuff, and none of it equaled up to being able to charge any of these people. But my wife and I and her were riding horses out at the family farm one day, and I said, hey, I got this case, and I have a mother who's a really nice lady, and I'd like to try to advance the ball a little bit, and I can't do it with the resources that we have. So she did a little research and found out that we could open a federal investigation, and then it's kind of a perfect storm. I went to the academy with a guy in St. Louis City's police academy named Chris Faber. He worked on the city police department for about 4 years and then went to the FBI. Well, he got transferred to a small place in Kentucky, and he had just gotten back to St. Louis. He had called me and said, hey, I got assigned to the violent crime unit. I'd like to help out. So him and a brand new intel analyst named Andrew Wood with the FBI came over and met with my partner and I, Donnie Thurman. And we started running with it.
And then, but the attorney told you, yeah, I'd like to take that case.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest question was we knew the insurance policy, we knew the travels of these phones. I knew there was a financial side, and I think the research was really, hey, is it a murder for hire if somebody gets murdered and then they try to claim life insurance policy profit.
Right. And you find a lot of this stuff out because after you get the feds involved, I was called feds, but you get more information from these phones and you start listening to some jailhouse calls that lead you in different directions and tell you more information about that murder and who might have done it.
Oh, absolutely.
Tell us about those.
Yeah, so remember how I said that Tarek Ellis was really only in communication with the victim, a burner phone that we attributed to Tim Norman, and then this, I'll never forget the last 4 digits, it's 5999 number. We'll just call it the shooter's number. So the records by that time had been purged by the cell phone company, so we weren't able to serve process on that phone.
On the 599 number.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what do you do then? You get creative. We run it through the jail call system, and there was a call placed to that phone number from a holding tank in St. Louis City, which is a whole nother story. We don't register our inmates with a number right away, so it's really hard if they're only in the Justice Center for a minute to figure out who's holding that phone. Mm-hmm. But there was a phone call to a female, and she was holding the shooter's phone. And this was prior to the murder, but she said, hey, call your other phone, call your other phone. So it was abundantly clear that a guy got arrested. He was in a holding tank at St. Louis City, and who I thought was his mother was obviously got his phone before he was carted off to jail.
Right.
So we ran the other numbers that were made out of that tank, and were able, along with the people that were in that tank, and we're able to determine that Travell Hill was in that holding tank, and we immediately recognized him as one of the names that were flown out to
Into
LA
the rap party?
for the rap
Right.
video.
Yep.
Rap video.
This is like I said, this thing's wild, man.
Yeah.
And then when you get that information, the COVID hits, right? So COVID hits
does.
right in the middle of this thing, and you guys are getting the ball rolling. And what happens then?
Yeah, I'd like to point out that you actually probably gave me COVID. You were like patient zero.
Oh, yeah, I was patient.
I know.
Yeah.
I know when it happened. You were
Yeah.
in Central Patrol.
Yep.
You walked by me, kind of spit all
Did you
over
get it
me
right?
while you were yelling.
Did you get it right after me?
Got all
Yes.
up in your face.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think I was the first case on the police
Yeah,
department.
well, I was the second. Thank you. No.
Sorry.
So anyway, COVID hits, and we didn't miss a beat in homicide. It was one of our busiest years we've ever had. So, but the federal government kind of shut down, or they were working from home. Anyway, the short of it is the U.S. Attorney's Office and the federal building, at the onset, they were ordered to work from home, don't have any meetings. And I hope I don't get anybody in trouble saying this. But we knew we had to meet. So
Yeah.
we would meet at the family farm
Yeah.
to have meetings
At the
about
college
it.
headquarters.
And you kept your social distance and talked.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Cool with that. Wore masks.
Kind of like
Yeah.
our happy hours, Tom.
Exactly. COVID wasn't for, yeah.
Okay, got you.
Let's
Go
just
on.
move on from the COVID.
Yeah.
But go
But,
ahead with the story, David. And so the ball gets rolling. You guys get enough to get a federal charge on Terica, the stripper, and Tim Norman. So tell us how that goes down from there. You guys go to arrest them, and tell us how the first one goes and then the second one.
Correct. We got criminal complaints. So they weren't grand jury indictments. They were, criminal complaints in the feds.
And what were the charges?
Conspiracy to commit murder for hire, and I think Tim had a wire fraud on there. Ultimately, I don't remember the exact charging. They were related to the murder.
Right.
What ultimately got indicted and tried was the murder for hire, conspiracy to commit murder for hire, and then the wire fraud. But in any event, we went down we determined that Terica was living in, I want to say it's called South Haven, Mississippi.
Huh?
Yep.
It's just south of the Tennessee border.
Yep.
So we went down and picked her up out of her house one day, and it's kind of interesting because we got a defender, a public defender, appointed to her before we went and arrested her, and had that public defender waiting at the police station when we brought her back to question her.
Oh,
No, why would you do that?
we knew she was going to need a lawyer. And
May as well just
Right,
cut to the chase.
just makes it a lot easier.
Okay.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
That's a good move.
You know,
We ain't got time. We're going to come
Yeah.
down here and see
No.
what's up.
No,
Well,
I mean, I
well-
just thought they would wait till after they read her rights, they'd wait to see if she wanted an attorney.
Right.
yeah, I think we all thought at that point it would be too late trying to find an attorney and get them up to speed.
Gotcha.
You know, I don't think that the attorney knew who the players were involved, but they knew the facts of the case when they
Right.
went down there. But in any event, we arrested her and brought her back and interviewed her. And to say so what I always say is the goal of any police interview is to know all the answers to your questions before you ask them, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if you can't do that, the second is pick some questions you know the answer to and ask those. So it's pretty minor stuff, but she had lied about. We looked at her banking records before we came there, and we could see that she had deposited just under $10,000 in cash a day or two after the murder in 2 separate deposits into her bank account. So that made us suspicious. So, you know, that's a clue.
JJ.
You know,
The smart part is the 10,000 because they don't think less 10,000 doesn't raise a flag.
They don't have to
Yeah.
write it. Yeah, don't
Hey,
have to
Dave,
send it.
were they all in ones?
She's
Well,
working.
I-
She's
I-
working.
I don't think they probably work as Tim Norman paid her. But so another kind of interesting thing about her is she went out to California the week after the murder, and we were able to put. She went out there with her mother and her child. And we were able to put her with Tim Norman a week after
Through their
the murder.
phones.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, everywhere you go with that phones, them 2 phones meet up. You got
Yeah.
a clue.
So she met with Tim Norman out in California too after the murder.
Week after the murder.
So you're interviewing her,
Yep.
and during the interview, and Dave and I talked before the show, but Dave immediately thinks she's lying. And why did you think she was lying?
Well, we asked her how much she got paid. Well, first off, her story didn't make sense. Like, she said, look, I had finished a weekend at Bottoms Up. I think it was a Monday morning. I just got this random text from Tim saying, hey, are you in town? Can you meet up at the Chase Park Plaza? I went over there. We had sex. We're having pillow talk afterwards. He says, hey, my nephew did some evil stuff to my mother, stole a bunch of money. Do you know him? She said, well, let me look at his picture. Oh, yeah, I just met him last week. Well, that doesn't make any
Right.
sense. So didn't believe her. She kind of goes through the story about she reached out to Andre that day while they were laying in bed so that she could prove that she knew him and could get a hold of him. And at that point, they went to the Walgreens, bought a couple burner phones, activated them. He said, get me his location. She actually found Andre out at his hotel and texted Tim, said, hey, I found his location. Tim said, my boys aren't ready. Keep tabs on him. So she goes out to the Galleria. I mean, this shows us how sadistic some of these people are.
Yeah.
She goes out to the Galleria and she's sitting there shopping and she's thinking, well, how the hell am I going to get him out of a house? So she buys him a pair of jeans to like lure him out of the house, knowing that she's going to meet him. So she goes to the murder scene, gets him out of the house, and she's also in contact with the shooter too, because he had given her, while she didn't know the shooter, he had given her the shooter's number. She gets a text message, says move, right when Andre gets out of the car. She takes off, hears gunshots, calls Tim, says, I think she said, what the fuck? And he says, hey, take yourself back to Memphis and don't ever come back here. And
Wow.
she had gotten paid already, so she took off and gone. But I did not believe that, and we were pretty hard on her. It was a tough interview. I didn't believe that she had just met Andre and
The week before.
the week before, and
Happenstance. But it
So-
turns out, I mean, not to get ahead, it turns out that she was telling the truth.
yeah, and it leads me into Tim's arrest
Right. So the next day, you guys go get Tim.
in Jackson, Mississippi.
Yep. And tell us about that.
So we round up and head down to Jackson, stay a night there, meet with the FBI agents down there. And it was a little bit crazy because we we had surveillance on him, and he, we're planning on going to We're planning on going a certain time. He gets up, he leaves, but
The old throw in the wrench.
correct.
Yep.
But he finally beds down back at home. So we send a bunch of people over there and knock on his door. He comes to the door, take him into custody at the doorway. Don't even do like a protective sweep. Lock the door, close it. He's got his cell phone in his pocket. We take the cell phone, take him to jail. He lawyers up, lock him down. But we had his cell phone,
Right.
which
Now a couple more things start coming out, and just, I mean, obviously he lawyers up right away, doesn't talk to you. But what do you and the team get out of that cell phone?
he's such a dummy. So when we got a warrant on the cell phone and we got into it, he had messages dating back years, and I mean years, all the way to, let's see, he had messages with Terica, essentially setting up that meeting that I didn't think really started the day of the murder.
Right.
Well, there were messages in there. Hey, are you in town? Come on over to the Chase Park Plaza. This is my room number, so on and so forth. So that verified Terica's story, right?
Right.
So the other part is we had messages dating back to when he got the insurance policy with Wally. They call him Wally Millions. He is a Grammy-nominated music producer that produced one of Nelly's albums and also had a track on Training Day, the movie.
Wow.
Yeah. Come on now.
So, I mean, it started off like, hey, Wally, I need insurance for my nephew. And, they're discussing insurance, and then quickly turns into Tim, oh, he doesn't have to know, does he? And
This is all on text, right?
yeah. Oh, yeah. And Wally saying, oh, no, he doesn't have to know. We'll get him to sign the paperwork. Watch how I do it. And then there's other messages about Wally trying to sell him more insurance on the nephew. And Tim's like, one of them discussed, oh, is it still double for accidental death? And I mean, it was just
Text after text.
yeah, it was crazy. But the one that was really, really bad is Wally's talking about changing the insurance policy for, better benefits and
So
and all
much trouble
this.
is Wally in.
Did Wally go to jail
Yeah, Wally went to jail for 3 or 4 years on wire fraud.
for this?
Oh yeah.
He got off easy.
Wally, there's some question on whether Andre signed one of the policies, but there's no question that he signed any of these. And I honestly think to this day, if Andre signed something, he did not know what he was signing,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah.
But the policies were just riddled with misstatements. An insurance agent's supposed to check the ID. None of this stuff happened. But the really damning text message for Tim was they were discussing a replacement policy, and Tim said to him, don't do anything. He's not going to make it 6 months, bro.
So this is all on text messages?
Yes.
That's smart.
Smart.
So what I do want to go back just a little bit, Dave, because I found this interesting when I was talking to you. When you arrest Tim, you make 2 phone calls. Who are those 2 phone calls to?
Our first phone call was to Andre's mother, Miss Griggs. And so her and I, and to some degree, Andre's brother, Darren, developed a really good relationship right off the start. There's just some people that are just a pleasure to deal with, and that family is just the best I've ever dealt with.
Really?
As far as homicide victims' families. They're amazing. But Miss Griggs and I came up with a deal at the beginning. If she doesn't call 911 anymore, or call my bosses or cause it, I just wanted to put her at ease that something was being done. But I gave her no updates on the case. None.
You really can't.
We didn't talk to we didn't tell the family We didn't tell other police officers where we were. We didn't tell we didn't tell anybody.
Loose lips sink
nobody.
ships, brother.
We didn't
Yep.
even interview a witness before we charged these people.
Surprised you didn't call me. I'm the kind of guy they were trying to keep it from. But so you with Miss Griggs, is that so you call her, and what's her reaction?
It was a very emotional phone call. I don't think there were the team of investigators, Donnie Thurman, Andrew Wood, Chris Faber, Angie Danis. We were all huddled around the phone, and it was Miss Griggs works at a jail down in Texas, so at the time she didn't always have her phone, so I think I had to call the jail and say, hey, you need to get a hold of her, because we knew this was going to hit the news at some point.
right.
We wanted to be in touch with her, and it was an emotional call to say the least. I don't think there was a dry eye in the group. Miss Griggs was very thankful, and she's just a great person.
That's awesome.
And then the next call you make is who's that to?
Robbie Montgomery.
And how did that go? And again, Robbie is the grandmother of the victim,
Owner of Sweetie Pies.
right? And she was also what some of you talked to throughout the investigation. Just give updates here and there, and she always wanted this case solved, but it probably wasn't solved exactly the way she wanted it solved. But go ahead.
Yeah. I called her. I recorded the phone call because I really believed that in her heart of hearts she knew that.
Who did it?
Yeah. And she was broken up, to say the least. But, during the investigation, we had determined that obviously Tim was in St. Louis at the time of the murder. It's really kind of tragic. The police show up at her door and say, hey, there's a body at the morgue and we think it's Andre. Well,
Wow.
she's calling Tim, right?
Oh,
Now, Tim's in St. Louis waiting for his flight to take off because it's delayed.
oh,
And Tim doesn't say, hey, I'm in St. Louis, I'll come get you. He doesn't do that.
another
But
clue.
he calls his security guard and says, hey, Mama's got to go down to the morgue. Why don't you go with her?
Yeah.
And then flies out to L.A. But she didn't know about the insurance policy. She didn't know he was in L.A. She was devastated. And my heart goes out to her, too.
Now she's still.
yeah.
She was rather old at the time. Is she still? Do you know if she's still alive? And was this the demise of the restaurant then? Was it closed before that?
I think they had one more. Well, Tim, I think, had a Sweetie Pies down in Jackson. And then Miss Robbie still had one over on Olive.
I ate there. You guys ever eat there?
No.
It's right on Manchester. We went in. It was good. Not that it has anything to do with anything, but
But there was I'll go back to that rap video that we mentioned earlier, and Dave found out about that rap video. But in that rap video ends up being the shooter and the victim. We're both in that rap video.
No,
right?
the victim was not.
Oh, he was
No,
not? Okay. I thought Andre was in
The
it.
shooter and his brothers.
The shooters and his brothers. And but one of the things is when you go to a federal trial, there's always somebody that sits first seat. And Dave was chosen for that guy. It's usually the person that's most involved and most knowledgeable of the case. And about 90% of the time, and Dave and I talked about this, about 95% of the time that person gets called to the witness stand to come up and kind of wrap the case up with all the facts. And for one reason, and we've talked about this on other shows, but that Dave did not testify and go through that.
Yeah. So remember when I talked about his cell phone? Well, I mean, anybody, if you Google my name, I was sued once. It was thrown out, but there was an allegation that I destroyed a cell phone or some stuff on the cell phone.
We've talked. That's what I'm saying. We've talked about those silly
Yeah.
lawsuits.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah, and it was thrown out. And it was complete and total ridiculousness. But Tim, it was obvious that Tim had seen that, and they actually tried to. There was a motion to suppress the evidence on that cell phone, and the prosecutors put up the Special Agent Faber as their witness, and then Tim Norman called me as a defense witness to try to get into that lawsuit. And the judge shut it down right away because it was completely improper. But it was abundantly clear that they were going to try to make me the the bad guy in the entire
Right.
deal.
And they said that, and then they, in their lawsuit, or his claim was that Dave went in the house to get the cell phone. It wasn't on him with all those people. So they were going to escape him out. And then how did you prove that did not happen?
Well, I mean, I never even touched the phone outside of an evidence bag. It, Faber had it, and we turned it into our people, and it got examined. But there was nothing funny about it. But at some point during trial prep, we were all sitting in a meeting because in federal trials we've all been through them, and then they bring their A game, right?
Right.
I mean,
Everybody does.
So it was a month straight of trial prep, 8 hours a day. And they said, hey, we're not going to, we're going to break this to you. We're not going to call you as a witness. And I'm not going to lie. I was a little bit upset. And I had a conversation with them. And, at the end of the day, you put your ego away and you do what's best for the case. And I think in the end, it threw them off their game, not because I'm anything special.
Right.
They got a change up.
They
Change up on the outside corner.
Correct. And it was perfect trial strategy.
But what I wanted you to get to, though, is you guys reviewed some jailhouse tapes that made it clear that that's exactly how that arrest went down, is how you described it before.
Oh, yeah. So Tim gets in, books it. I don't remember the facility, somewhere around Jackson, Mississippi. And he gets into jail and he picks up the phone. And he's like, a SWAT team came to my door with machine guns and helmets. All I had was my phone and my basketball shorts. And
so that was on the tape. So
there it is.
So he proved right there that he lied to get the lawsuit, which we've talked about several times before.
Yeah.
But this is what a great story. And again, the trial went on, and this thing divided the family because of that burglary. They put different things out on the street. And with this reality show, it was extremely popular. And it even divided their fans, and I don't think they liked him very much, and they liked Andre a lot. And when this thing broke down, it was all over the place, and it was. But hearing it from your point of view is pretty cool stuff, and we appreciate you coming by.
What did Tim Norman get sentenced? What was his sentence?
Life. The shooter.
Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Life?
Yeah, Tim Norman got life without parole. The shooter got about 33 years, and Terica got 3, and Wally got 3 or 4 years.
Is Wally still doing insurance?
Leave that for Ed Messplay. Awesome. Well, that's all.
And then one of the things I wanted to mention too is that Dave comes from his wife's family. Yeah. So his wife's family. Tell us a little bit about the wife's family and their background.
Well, I come from a police family. My father's a retired police officer. My sister was a 911 dispatcher. My brother-in-law was a retired police officer, and my mother managed to stay married to my father for all these years and deal with all
was
of us.
Was he in St. Louis City?
No, he's a Webster Groves police officer, and brother-in-law was in Jefferson County. But I married into a family of defense attorneys. So my late father-in-law worked for Charlie Shaw.
Okay.
And my wife's twin sister, Stephanie, she works for Travis Noble. And their older sister, Cynthia, does a private practice defense work.
Were they disappointed when you came around?
No. I do. Kind of funny story. My wife's twin sister married a professional musician that plays for Guns N' Roses, and I always tell my wife, I said, "Boy, you missed the boat, man! Like, you married a cop."
Your sister's rolling around all over the tour.
That's crazy.
Correct.
Tour of the United States.
Correct. Yeah.
But no, that's a great story.